GameStop employees. What are some of your horror stories? Former employee and 2 wonderful stories. 1. Older lady brings in a bag. She looks like an addict and wants to sell her Wii. I put my hand in the bag and it's soaking wet. Cat pee. She was furious I wouldn't take it. From that day forward, made every customer take all trades out of bags themselves. 2. My first store was long and I had a kid and mom in the back. Mom wasn't paying attention at all. 8-year-old was walking around and gets really quiet. Then, mom rushes the kid out of the store. Go back there and he took a crap on the floor. Watch the tape. Mom finds him squatting, lets him finish, and then takes him out. That mother... Okay, look. Mothers can be exhausted, right? And sometimes things can just be like, oh, this again, alright, whatever. But I don't think she's winning any Mother of the Year awards anytime soon. Story 2. This was 2007 or so. GameStop had a used game return policy, 7 days, no questions asked, full refund. People would abuse this constantly like a rental service. We knew it and we were able to flag people who did it too often and decline them the returns. Manager policy, not company policy. Then there was this one woman. Old lady, gaggle of grandkids. Seemed so sweet. Was very nice to us while in the store, asking for help, recommendations, etc. Bought them a PS2 and a frickin' gigantic stack of games, like at least 20 to 25. Her total came out over $400. I rang her out, handed her the multiple bags of stuff, and said to the kids something along the lines of, wow, you guys are lucky to have such a great grandma. This many games will last you months. The grandma chuckled and said, oh, they're only in town for the week. You guys have that 7-day return policy. I'll see you in 6 days. So, just like Steam refunds now, right? Although those are a little more strict, it's not 7 days, but still. Also, what in the world did she buy where it's 20 to 25 games and her total was only $400? The games alone would cost well over that if they were, I don't know, of any note. And then the PS2 on top of that to $400? Does the PS2 not take it to $400? I don't get it. Story 3. Years ago, 2007 to 2008-ish, I trained a kid that turned around and robbed the store at gunpoint. A month after we fired him for stealing, he and his buddies left without shooting anyone. My coworker was on the phone with the cops after he left while I was getting his old employee file out, reading off his 2 addresses he had down, parents and grandparents, as well as his phone number, etc. He's still serving time as the gun they used was apparently used in another homicide. This kid, that's so stupid. You're so stupid. What? But I do think the rationale behind it is funny. Oh, you're gonna fire me for stealing stuff? Fine, I'll steal stuff with force. And not employed. You can't fire me then. So true, kid. Story 4. I used to be the ASM of a GameStop, but nothing really out of the ordinary happened there. Just a lot of lingerers. When I was the manager of a local game store, though, there were definitely a lot of wild stories. The one that sticks out the most is this old dude we called Psycho Sexy, who would come in every Monday morning, try to sell me or whoever was working bootleg adult videos. He would tell us that they were good for busting fat nuts too, and said that he would sell them to us super cheap. Every Monday, he would come in, open up his duffel bag of bootleg content, get refused, and then leave and come back the following Monday. This went on for almost 3 years. Story 5. Never was an employee, but on the night Grand Theft Auto 4 came out, I was waiting in line, and this kid rode up in the parking lot and started bragging about how he got the first copy and held his copy out the window. After about 10 to 15 seconds of bragging and holding it outside the window, another kid ran up from behind the car, yanked the copy, and ran into the woods behind the GameStop. They never found the kid who took it, and the kid in the car started crying immediately. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I don't know what else to say. Holding it out the window was just so unnecessary. Have the window closed and press it up to it at least. This dude bragged in the stupidest way possible and paid the price. Honestly, he deserved it. Story 6. Former GameStop employee here. Worked in a store on the edge of a super sketchy part of Akron, Ohio. Back in the PS2 era, a guy brought in a box of trades. There were 3 games. Leisure Suit Larry, Playboy the Mansion, The Guy Game. The rest of the box was nothing but adult content on VHS. He was politely asked to leave, and he asked us why. My coworker's response had me keeling over. Because there's nut all over your stuff! He left. Story 7. Worked at a GameStop a long time ago, but I will never forget this one. One night, a guy brought in a really dusty and dirty GameCube wanting cash, of course. I asked him if it worked, and he said he didn't know because he hadn't played it in a long time. I told him that we have to check every console, and when I turned it on and opened the lip, about 100 roaches came running all over the counter. As far as horror stories go, this one is the winner so far. Oh my god. That's revolting and very frightening. I guarantee that to this day, there's a roach or two just hanging around the GameStop, and it's because of this guy. Story 8. I got scolded by management for helping a woman for 30 minutes. She bought 12 games and was looking for good recommendations for her son who is on the spectrum. I found every game on her list and a few more to surprise him. Those surprise games were Okami and Katamari Damacy. She was overjoyed that her son was going to have lots of good games to play. Why were they mad over such a large sale? Oh, because they weren't frickin' used. Screw that store. That woman wanted to make sure her son was happy and I was tasked to do so. I know I did a good job and you guys can close shop. Story 9. I worked at GameStop as an ASM and SM for 4-ish years. I have so many stories of creepy, scary, and rude customers. Some highlights. I once got asked out on a date at the register. I'm young and naive and awkward, and I kind of stop in my tracks and tell him that I'm working and I can't answer that. I work another 4 hours or so and close by myself, and he was waiting in the parking lot for me to leave. I had a family that would bring their son in every Saturday. They explained to me that he had severe autism and was nonverbal. No problem. Except they would stand in a corner and text or whatever while he would knock over stands, rip things from walls, and even run behind the counter and try to bite you. I had to get permission to ban them from the store, but I was tired of trying to not get bit. Parents, I have some information for you. Just because your kid has autism does not mean they need to run wild. Children with autism do not inherently misbehave. It might be harder for them to understand why some things are wrong or something like that, but just because they have autism does not mean you cannot control them. I realized the way I said that, control them, was a bit weird. I hope you know what I mean. But seriously, parents, just keep your kids under control. Don't have them tearing stuff apart or pulling stuff off walls. Like, come on, just be better. Story 10. Had a couple come in to return a Sesame Street video game and a controller. They had a receipt from over a year ago. The game was scratched to hell, and the controller was full of dried soda. They said it didn't work anymore. Shocker. And were furious when I wouldn't give them their money back. Like, standing there screaming at me. I was the manager, so I had no one else to back me up. It was crazy. Their kid was bawling, the lady was swearing like a syphilitic sailor, and the husband couldn't finish a sentence. Pretty sure they were both super high, too. So that was fun. When the PS2 came out, I was assistant manager, and my manager would sell them out of the back room at a markup. Such a snake. I took the demo Xbox home with a copy of Halo before the system launched one night, and had a 4-player all-night party. One of our other local stores had someone dig through the outside wall and steal everything out of their back room. Pulling a heist on a GameStop like that, it takes some dedication. Honestly, at that point, I don't know. They worked for it. It's kind of impressive, honestly. Story 11. I worked in a store where theft was very common, but this one dude. He nabbed one of the cheap controllers off the wall from the back of the store, puts it in his backpack. Then he comes over to the counter, he reaches across the counter, opens a drawer and steals a brand new game out of the drawer. Takes it away from the register, opens it, waits in line, trades the game in for $25. Then he asks me to look for something in one of the bottom drawers and he steals back the game he just traded in a second time. After that, he immediately left the store before I could notice he was gone. I gotta give him some credit. He had some slick balls. So many other sketchy things too, but this one I just had to laugh at. OP, I would personally reevaluate how you use the phrase slick balls. That's just me though. I agree with the sentiment though. This kid had some cojones. Story 12. A gentleman comes in to buy one of our old 360 bundles, used. The old system that required the HD. He brings it back a few days later and complains that it doesn't work. We start our normal troubleshooting methods in store. We couldn't figure anything out, so I do a swap. Take his old system in as defective and then sell him a replacement bundle. I go through and try to wipe the system so we can ship it back to the warehouse. Cockroaches start crawling out of the system instead. I freak out. I throw the system in one of our giant shopping bags, throw that in a box, tape it shut, and throw that in another bag. My manager tells me to just shrink it out, meaning we take the loss and destroy it in the back. I take it out to the parking lot and just have to throw it around to destroy it. These cockroaches frickin' scatter like marbles on a floor. I'm dancing around the parking lot on my tiptoes to avoid the flood. It was awful. How is this the second cockroach story? That seems unlikely to me. Do these kind of critters like to live inside of consoles? I've never heard of this in my life. Story 13. I had a guy call me a terrorist. I'm Middle Eastern. Another time, we had a buy two, get one free sale on pre-owned games. He wanted to buy the 2 cheaper games and get the expensive one free. When informed that's not how it works, he flipped out. We had to call security in the mall we were in just to get him to leave. He called corporate, and corporate told us he was documented, so any negative reviews on the next few weeks would be flagged. My manager stood up for me that day. I miss that guy. We also had a fire break out in the back room. Got rid of a lot of old inventory. Happened on Halloween. We were closed for a few days to clean and stuff. I used a fire extinguisher that day. First time ever. Story 14. I was hired to help open a new store. A store where the manager was male and everyone he hired, female. He was definitely trying to cultivate a hot GameStop kind of situation. Word got around and we had people coming in to visit ours when they had stores much closer to where they lived. They didn't really buy anything, just kind of lurked around for hours at a time and chatted the staff up. There were days where they would wait for us to close up, and that was kind of scary. I was eventually let go for not being friendly enough, which was apparently about 3 months before the manager had a total screaming meltdown during store hours, and he declared himself High Archangel and threw some crap at a customer and was later picked up by an ambulance. So I guess my horror story is the whole damn job. Story 15. I once had a lady and her teenage son come in to trade in several DVDs and games they had stolen from Walmart behind the strip mall where our store was. Walmart employee calls me to ask if they're in my store, and says the cops are on their way, so stall or do whatever I can to keep them there. I said, sure. I told them the cash versus store credit value of their items without mentioning that I can't even take them because they are still wrapped in cellophane. I walk them around the store and talk about which games are the best value for the money, etc. The cops show up and ask them to step outside, and I just smile and go back behind the counter. They followed the police out, and one officer comes back a minute later to get the merchandise. Last I heard about it. Not a horror story, but definitely weird. Then there was this wealthy couple who had 3 kids, and each kid had a Wii, a PS3, and an Xbox 360. They would pre-order every major game that came out for each system, always the deluxe edition. They spent a ton of money in our store and they were crazy. So abusive to every employee. They cussed at us and called us stupid. They would ask for things they knew they couldn't have and then throw a fit. They would scour their receipts for anything that could be a mistake and make you explain it to them over and over. I went to work at a different company and they came into my store there and got in line for my favorite cashier. I immediately called a manager over when it was their turn to check out, explained how I knew them and that there was a 99% chance they would make the cashier cry. He went over and just as he got there, they were beginning to raise their voices about some supposed mistake. Luckily, that manager is super good at handling people, and got them out without letting them get a word in edgewise. I practically had PTSD from dealing with them. I think they got off on abusing people together. They would sometimes be laughing as they did it. If they found a legitimate mistake in anything, their faces would light up. Truly evil people. Story 16. I was in ASM for about a year, had done retail before. Our store was right between a fairly upscale touristy part of town, as well as some of the poorer neighborhoods, so we got all sorts of people. I'll tell one horror story and then one uplifting one. The holiday season was in full swing and we were always crowded. This particular day we had a few seasonal hires in to help with the workload, and I was behind the counter pulling games as people came up to make transactions faster. Then, suddenly, a smell hit the entire building like 100 cats had peed in the air conditioner, and then someone had tried to get it dry by stoking a fire with burning hair. My seasonals looked at me with a mix of confusion and terror, as a family of 4 approached the counter and it slowly became apparent that they were the cause of the smell. I've been noseblind before from staying with an aunt who used to be an animal hoarder, but this was far worse. I sent my seasonals on break, grabbed the hand sanitizer, pumped a small mountain of it into my hands, and as casually as possible, smeared it on my upper lip, hoping my facial hair would hold onto it and block the smell. It mostly worked. I was already in holiday rush mode, but this was the fastest I had ever got a used Xbox 360 and GTA 5 packaged and ready to go. When they left, we noticed that the store had actually cleared out of all other customers who just couldn't deal with the odor. My SM came back, gave me props for not embarrassing them, and promptly proceeded to fill our store with Febreze. Alright, now one uplifting story. We had our regular customers, and over time we would get to recognize a few people and have a general sense of what their interests were, beyond just being salespeople and trying to pitch whatever was hot and new. Frequently, we would also get people who knew they had 7 days or however long to trade a game back in for the full amount they paid for, and would use us as a general rental service that way. We were supposed to flag their account somehow to stop this from happening, but it wasn't really common enough at our location, so we didn't really care. We weren't losing money, and it was better than them stealing. One sort of grungy guy missing a couple of teeth would come in regularly, and he had a few different criteria. He owned a regular DS, He didn't have much money, and he wanted the games to be very long so they could occupy his time. Usually RPGs, but they had to have a good story. He would bring it back if it wasn't engaging enough and ask for something else. The first couple of times he did this, I thought that maybe he was trying to pull one over on us. But the games he was picking actually were too long to reasonably finish in the time he would have them. I guess I could have checked the save files, but it wasn't that big of a deal. He disappears for a couple of weeks, and then one day I'm working, I get a call. And it's him. It's not too busy, so we chat for a few minutes. He basically wants to pick my brain about what we've got that's less than $10 that will last for a month, and if it's worth his time to come and get it. Because his money is so tight right now that just driving to our store and not finding something will be sort of a significant loss. This happens to be a week where Dragon Quest IX is on sale for less than $10, and we have one copy left. So I set it aside and tell him to try it out. My wife isn't a big JRPG fan, but she tried it and it held her interest for quite a while. So maybe this guy will like it too. He comes by, gets it, thanks me, and leaves. I don't see him for months. He's one of those regulars who you would get to thinking about. Whether or not you would really say you were acquainted, but just that general, I hope they're okay sort of thing. Then, one day he comes back in wearing a full suit, grinning ear to ear. I recognize him right away and ask how things are going. He tells me things turned around and he got a job as a cook at a Sonic within walking distance from his house. And he had been able to save his money for quite a while, thanks to Dragon Quest being so long. And he wanted to say thanks and to buy his mom a PS3. He knew the only games she really recognized were classics, so we picked out one of the new Pac-Man games and Namco Museum. He was looking at the price tags of a couple of other ones and I could tell he was doing some quick mental math. So I told him, pick up the ones you're looking at and we'll see what we can make work. He gets one more game for his mom and brings them up to the front. It's been a few years since, so I honestly don't remember what, if any, promotions we had going on at the time. But wouldn't you know it, he got enough of a discount for some mysterious reason that he was able to afford everything. Honestly, I'm glad OP threw that uplifting story in there. It's just a nice feel-good story amongst a lot of weird stuff and cockroaches, weirdly enough. I'm really glad that guy managed to get a solid job and save up some money. That's huge. I really do feel uplifted by that. Good job, OP. As for the smell one, though, I've been lucky enough to never work retail. But if I had to and I was basically locked in that box with a group of people who smell absolutely horrendous, I don't know what I would do. I am very sensitive to bad smells. I would fold like a leaf. But I will say, though, the hand sanitizer under the nose trick, that's pretty good. Although, wouldn't that, burn a little bit? I don't know. I guess if it's not super strong hand sanitizer, it'd be fine. Story 17. I was an assistant manager when one of the Madden games came out. 04, maybe? We were doing a big midnight opening for it, and everyone was having a great time waiting for the game, which we were picking up from another store about 30 miles away. Around 11 p.m., after people had been waiting for almost 2 hours after the mall closed, I get a phone call. The game wasn't coming. I almost broke down sitting behind the register, dreading the thought of telling everyone that they just wasted their time. To make matters worse, another store within walking distance of us got their games. I just wanted to die that night. I'm so grateful that our customers took it well and didn't get too angry. Story 18. Not a horror story, but it always makes me laugh when I think about it. I worked at a big box store similar to Best Buy when the Wii U first came out. After months of Wii U's being impossible to find, we finally had some stock in. When a guy stopped me to ask the price on the Wii U. How much is the Wii U console? It's $400 Canadian plus tax. Yeah, that's too much money. Can you do any better on the price? Yeah, for sure. For you, I can give it to you for $399.99. That's much better. I'll take two.